Hey guys, welcome back to Jesus Freaks. I am continuing today on chapter 4 in John Eldredge's book, The Beautiful Outlaw. You can find the other 3 chapters posted before this one on this page, or you can find them in Facebook as well, where I've been sharing them. Today is chapter 4. No, having a lot of... I can't get comfortable, and so my camera is really giving me some trouble today. I hope that works. Anyway, today is chapter 4, Fierce Intention. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the 3rd day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said. "This shall never happen to you." And Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." Matthew 16:21-23. Hold on now. This doesn't sound very playful. What are we to make of the sudden mood changes that erupt from Jesus like thunder from a clear sky? If your children acted this way, you'd send them to their rooms. Whatever we have here, we certainly don't have a man of mild emotion or two-dimensional passivity. For some reason, we keep forgetting that Jesus is operating in enemy territory. We project into the gospel stories a pastoral backdrop, the quaint charm of a Middle Eastern travel brochure, picturesque villages, bustling markets, smiling children, and Jesus wandering through it all like a son come home from college. We forget the context of his life and mission. His story begins with genocide, the massacre of the innocents, Herod's attempt to murder Jesus by ordering the systematic execution of all young boys around Bethlehem. I've never seen this included in a crush scene. Who could bear it? You must picture ethnic cleansing as the 20th century saw in Bosnia, Rwanda, Burma. Atrocity. The ground soaked with the blood of children who 5 minutes earlier were laughing and playing. God the Father, knowing this is about to strike, sends an angel to warn Joseph. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." And so he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. Matthew chapter 2, verses 13-15. The little family flees the country under cover of darkness like fugitives. The father's strategy is intriguing. Surely God could have simply taken Herod out, or sent angels to surround the Holy Family. Why must they run for their lives? It ought to make you think twice about how God goes about his plans in this world. But let us continue with the facts. An angel in the night, a flight in the dark, hiding south of the border like outlaws. Thus begins a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Jesus went around in Galilee, purposely staying away from Judea, because the Jews were there waiting to take his life. John 7:1. The Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Aware of this, Jesus withdrew from that place. Matthew 12:14-15. Again they tried to seize him, but he escaped their grasp, and Jesus went back across the Jordan to the place where John had been baptizing in the early days. From John 10:39-40. Surely you see that Jesus was a hunted man. We cannot understand his actions nor taste the richness of his personality until we set them within context. The man is operating deep behind enemy lines. This colors his extraordinary movements across the pages of the gospel and helps to strip away the benevolent religious fog that continues to creep into our reading. It also gives depth and poignancy to moments of self-disclosure, such as the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, in Matthew 8:20, because he was hunted. But is it not more true to say that he is the hunter? As Jesus steps out from behind those 30 years of almost total obscurity into the task set out from behind, As Jesus steps out from behind those 30 years of almost total obscurity into the task set before him, both men and demons began to feel his fierce attention. He went down to Capernaum, a town in Galilee, and on the Sabbath began to teach the people. They were amazed at his teaching because his message had authority. In the synagogue there was a man possessed by a demon, an evil spirit. He cried out at the top of his voice, "Ha! What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," Jesus said sternly. "Come out of him." And the demon threw the man down before them all, and it came out without injuring him. All the people were amazed and said to each other, "What is this teaching? With authority and power he gives orders to evil spirits and they come out?" Luke 4:31-36. You cannot appreciate the difficulty of this till you've tried it yourself. Most of us wouldn't want to walk into a dark alley if we could avoid it. Early in his novel, Paralandra, C.S. Lewis tells the story of a man called to help a friend on a very important task, one that is opposed by dark powers. As he leaves the train station and begins his trek to his friend's cottage in fading twilight, he encounters that opposition. Go back, it whispered to me. Send him a wire. Tell him you were ill. Say you'll come some other time. Anything." The strength of the feeling astonished me. I stood still for a few moments, telling myself not to be a fool, and when I finally resumed my walk, I was wondering whether this might be the beginning of a nervous breakdown. He passes an abandoned factory that looks unbelievably ominous. Fear slithers in. He is shot through with doubts about his friend, then doubts about his view of the universe, then more thoughts about having a nervous breakdown, which all seem confirmed by the swirling chaos in his mind and emotions. He wonders if he might be going mad. I was past the dead factory now, down in the fog where it was very cold, and then came a moment, the first one, of absolute terror, and I had to bite my lips to keep myself from screaming. It was only a cat that had run across the road, but I found myself completely unnerved. "Soon you really will be screaming," said my inner tormentor, "running round and round, screaming, and you won't be able to stop it." At all events, I can't really describe how I reached the front door of that cottage. Somehow or other, despite the loathing and dismay that pulled me back, and a sort of invisible wall of resistance that met me in the face, fighting for each step and almost shrieking as a harmless spray of the hedge touched my face, I managed to get through the gate and up the little path, and there I was, drumming on the door, ringing the handle and shouting to him to let me in as if my life depended on it. An account so reliably written, it had to have been drawn from personal experience. Many of you have endured something similar, if only in nightmares, and this poor fellow was merely trying to make it from the station to the cottage. Jesus walks right up to people foaming at the mouth in full-blown demonic possession and confronts the ancient spirits directly. Very intentional, quite fierce. Then comes the thunderstorm at the temple. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found people selling cattle, sheep, doves, and the money changers seated at their tables, making a whip of cords. He drove all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who were selling doves, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." And his disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." John 2:13-17. In 2 verses, he empties the temple, a report that reads like the crack of a bullwhip, but take the action slowly. First, Jesus observes the shenanigans. and it makes him furious. Then he takes the time to make a weapon. Where did he get those cords? That required some looking around. Having found them, he had the patience and the forethought to weave them together effectively to make a usable whip. He knows what it takes to move large sedentary cattle and self-righteous profiteers. There's time enough here to cool off if this is merely an outburst of anger, but no. This is a plan to sustained aggression, particularly unsettling for pacifists. Following the flow of the text, it says that he then used that whip to drive all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. The livestock would have been kept in some sort of corral. They would have been standing for hours, languid, sleepy. An angry man flying upon them with a whip would ignite panic, mass panic. Animals feed upon one another's fears in seconds. Picture cattle and sheep running for their lives, crashing down the corrals, their hooves sliding frantically on the tiles, making them even more desperate. We have a stampede here. It then says he poured out the coins of the money changers and sent their tables tumbling. The money changers think men who make their living through extortion are reported to have been sitting at those tables. How easy is it to move carefully and quickly from a sitting position while moving your legs from the table that is being overturned in front of you? More panic. Meanwhile, the coins. Jesus doesn't permit them to gather their money and move off in an orderly fashion. He dumps the coins, scatters them. This is explosive. You've probably had a small handful of change fall off a counter. They burst in every direction like a jar of marbles. Imagine the chaos of hundreds and hundreds of coins erupting off the stone floors. Now layer this all together. The animals would have panicked in every direction, their keepers running after them, shouting, trying to get control, which only incinerates the panic. Add the greedy money changers scrambling around on the ground, grasping at their careening coins. Imagine the noise, bellowing of frightened livestock, mingled with the crashing of corrals, tables, coins, and the angry shouts of the incensed men. Over this, the shouts of Jesus. It is absolute pandemonium. Someone screaming fire in a casino would not be far from the reality. This is a fierce, intentional man, to be sure. But his passions are neither reckless nor momentary. In the midst of the fury, there is the touching tenderness toward the doves. These were in cages, and if Christ were to hurl them to the floor as he did the tables, the birds, innocent as well, doves, they would be hurt. And so he commands them to be removed. Could a small, unintimidating figure accomplish such a sustained riot? To pull off driving all of them out of the temple would require more than a few seconds and repeated blows. This is a sustained assault. If a frail man with a meek voice tried this, he'd be log-jammed by the sheer number and inertia of the traffic. Jesus is a locomotive, a juggernaut. For all practical purposes here, he is the bull in the china shop. This is our Jesus. But is this the Jesus of our worship songs? The religious fog sneaks in to obscure Jesus with lines comparing him to a rose trampled on the ground. Helpless, lovely Jesus, vegetarian, pacifist, tranquil. Oh wait, nah, that was Gandhi, not Jesus. Can you picture Gandhi or Buddha storming into the polling place of a local election, shouting, overturning tables, sending the participants fleeing? Now throw a small carnival into the mix, which they also need to rout. Impossible. Whoever did this would have to be really committed to clear the building. Fierce and intentional. This is a breathtaking quality, especially when compared to our present age where doubt masquerades as humility, passivity cloaks as rest, and emasculated indecision poses as laid-back enlightenment. Oh, Jesus could be soft, and he certainly was humble, but his fierce intentionality is riveting to watch. Look at him before Lazarus' tomb. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. And when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. John 11:17 and 32 through 33. This expression, deeply moved in spirit and troubled, seems unhelpfully vague. I'm deeply moved when someone remembers my birthday. An Oxford Don who loses his notes is troubled. We're not even close to the true nature of his mood yet. The root of the Greek word here means to snort in anger, like a war horse. Peterson therefore translated, a deep anger welled up within him. John 11:33. Yes, that's better. Of course it did. This is the Prince of Life, who came that we might have life. What do you suppose his personal attitude is toward death? And here, the death of a close friend? I hate death. I think I hate it more than anything else in the whole world. Jesus has mighty strong feelings about it too. Deeply moved doesn't mean someone had to catch his arm and help him toward the casket. Jesus was overcome with sorrow. Something fierce is rising up in him. A second round of his warhorse anger wells up. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" And so they took away the stone. And Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." Verses 38 through 43. Oh, to have heard this command, heard the mightiness in his voice. John uses the word loud to describe it. He uses this very same word to describe the ferocity of a storm that nearly sank their boat. Apparently, Jesus' command here reminded John of the intensity of a storm. Jesus doesn't ask Lazarus to come out. He doesn't suggest he do it. He commands him to life with the rumble of thunder and the crack of lightning. And obediently, Lazarus comes hopping out like a mummy. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Verse 44. Jesus finishes his business here with the very businesslike order to take off the grave clothes and let him go, like a hostage negotiator who has just freed a victim. G.K. Chesterton conducted something of a personal experiment to see what the overall impression would be if a person simply read the Gospels without any previous information regarding Jesus, and what he found surprised him. It is full of sudden gestures evidently significant, except that we hardly know what they signify, of enigmatic silences, of ironical replies. The outbreaks of wrath, like storms of above our atmosphere, do not seem to break out exactly where we would expect them, but to follow some higher weather chart of their own. Oh, but do they make sense when you understand that it is a man on a mission? But the same man who could be so playful is also a man on fire. If you would know Jesus, you must know this. His fierce intentionality is essential to his personality. Nature bears witness. Picture an African lion stalking through tall grass, closing in on its prey, the ruthless focus, the vigilant keenness, or the gaze of a silverback gorilla when he turns to confront an intruder crossing the hidden boundary of his band. How about a mother brown bear when her cubs are threatened? 600 pounds of unrelenting fury. Now imagine you are watching one of those scenes, not on the Nature Channel, but from 30 feet away. Oh, yes, we find a very fierce intentionality in nature, reflecting the personality of the artist. Knowing this, delighting in this, helps us delight in his highly provocative actions regarding the Sabbath. There is nothing like arrogant religious falsehood to arouse this part of Jesus. On a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman who was there had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you're set free from your infirmity." And then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Indignant because he had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue ruler said to the people, "There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not the Sabbath." The Lord answered him, "You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or donkey from the stall and let it out to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her?" When he said this, all his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things he was doing. From Luke 13:10-17. There is nothing so suffocating as religious legalism. Here, in the one place this woman can hope for freedom, she is denied for 18 years. But Jesus is disgusted with it. He publicly humiliates the defenders of this sanctified bondage. His action isn't exactly going to ingratiate him with the authorities. I doubt very much willing to publicly humiliate Pharisees is on any requirement list for pastoral candidates. And I doubt it ought to be. This sort of thing takes a rare holiness to accomplish righteously. But the people are cheering, and well, they should. And then there's the story of subduing the storm I referred to earlier, and immediately after the encounter with Legion. In all 3 synoptic gospels, these 2 stories are linked. A frightening storm, and then a frightening demoniac. In all 3 accounts, Jesus, who was sleeping in the stern of the sinking boat, rises to confront the tempest like a drill sergeant. "Quiet! Be still!" Now, why does he need to rebuke the storm? The word epitomeo is the same used when Jesus commands foul spirits to come out of people. Fascinating. The storm needed to be rebuked. The very next episode, in all 3 synoptics, finds Christ stepping onto the shore to confront Legion. He frees the man. The locals rage against Jesus, and he gets right back in the boat and returns to the other side. Did he go to all that effort for one man? It ended up that way. And Jesus did say something about leaving the 99 to find the one. It certainly is an awe-inspiring doubleheader, and fearsome too. That is, Jesus is fearsome. Everything else trembles before him. And then he turns toward Jerusalem, turns toward the walled city like a general turning his forces into the hottest part of a battle, A few honest Pharisees, Nicodemus perhaps, warn him, "Leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you." And Jesus replies, "Go tell that fox, I will drive out demons and heal people today and tomorrow. And on the third day, I will reach my goal." Luke 13:31-32. This man will not be intimidated, will not be deterred. It certainly sets his rebuke of Peter when he tried to dissuade Jesus within its context, words that otherwise feel cutting and unnecessarily cruel. Yes, there is a leisureliness to Jesus. He'll stop whatever he's doing to attend to someone in need. The man never ever seems to be in a hurry, but his manner can be appreciated only in light of a deeper river flowing in him, this fierce intentionality. Otherwise, you get Otherwise, you get those popular and ridiculous portraits of Jesus as the wandering storyteller, no more controversial or dangerous than a clerk in a health food store. The life of Jesus went as swift and straight as a thunderbolt, wrote Chesterton, almost in the manner of a military march, certainly in the manner of a quest of a hero moving to his achievement or his doom. And in the most beautiful turn of events, the hunted becomes the hunter indeed, as Jesus crucified descends into hell personally to demand the keys from Satan. What was that journey like? Far more than a twilight walk to a cottage. He faces a creature way more terrifying than anything you've met in your nightmares, and makes him bend the knee. Then Jesus simply turns and walks back out again, leading a train of rescued captives with him, only to race off and catch up with two disciples limping down a road toward a town called Emmaus. All right, guys, that was chapter 4. Come back tomorrow for the chapter 5, the most human face of all. I love you guys so much, and thanks for coming with me today. Bye.